Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of The Adventures of a Real Estate Investor. I'm Susie.
And I'm Michael. We're excited you joined us for this adventure.
So today I'm even more excited about our guests. And yes, I said plural because they are a wonderful, wonderful couple to work with. And just every time we talk to them, it's just all smiles and enthusiasm every single time. Like you two literally brighten my day. And I know that you're going to brighten everyone's day who listens to this. So thank you so much for joining us, Jonathan and Paula Nichols.
Hey, thanks for having us. We're excited to be here.
Yeah, and just to let our adventurous family know, like how we even met you two, right? Because I think a lot of people we meet through Brian Briscoe, like the one and only. We really love his meetup. But what I particularly loved is when I found out, Paula, that you were also really interested in doing this with Jonathan. So like when Jonathan then brought you into our little pack tribe, like it was just super exciting. You know, it's really cool to have like more women in this space and even more couples doing it, because I truly believe like when a partnership between, you know, a husband and wife, or even if you're just dating, that's totally fine. But when two people come together to be able to do a business together, the passion is so much stronger and it grows so much faster. I'm just really happy that you are in this space with Jonathan because it's a really phenomenal place to be.
Thank you, Susie. Yeah, I think it has been really fun. And I am so thankful that I get to work with him and get to support him as well. So
Absolutely. And I was just thinking, because we are talking about couples, there's only a handful of us, right? Like who actually screen together, you know, at networking events and actually in the business together, which is really cool. Yeah. So there's only a handful, and we're glad that you're in our group and you're part of that couple group as well.
Yeah, I agree. It's fun doing it together for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. It makes it a lot easier for sure. But before we move forward, would you mind sharing with our adventurous family a little bit about like why you both started investing in real estate? You can go one at a time or together or whatever, how you want to do it.
Share like a bit about your background as well.
Sure, absolutely. I'll go first and then I'll let Paula kind of fill in the gaps. So we've been married for close to 4.5 years now. And when we got married, we bought just a normal house, like what a lot of people do when they get married here in Arlington where we live. We didn't know anything, at least I should say I didn't know anything about real estate. I hired some realtors and bought a house and just kind of moved forward. And so one thing about me is I love to read. And so one day I picked up the book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, because I had heard it was a great book, started reading it. And it was like this light bulb went off that like, hey, you know what I'm doing to invest, because I was an avid investor in my 401k and stuff, like it may not be enough for our future. Like it just may not be sufficient. And so Paul and I kind of talked about it and began learning about real estate investing. And honestly, we just got the bug for it. Like we just couldn't learn enough. And we actually went on a vacation pretty shortly after we started learning. And we spent like the whole time listening to Bigger Pockets episodes, just getting every bit of information we could. And it was interesting because it just became something that was a lot more than just a way to invest. It became a passion for us, something that we enjoyed doing. And so from there, we just took off and grew. We started out buying a fourplex that we house hacked. We actually moved into the fourplex from our comfortable, nice house to the fourplex and renovated the whole thing one unit at a time. And then we started Airbnb-ing it. And so that was our niche. The first couple of years was doing short-term rental. And we still have that short-term rental business today. And so we just kept growing and making more investments. And then a couple of years ago, we started learning about multifamily and just the opportunities it offered from a scaling perspective and from a perspective of being able to impact the lives of others, which is obviously something I know you two are big on. You know, I saw a lot of friends, family, coworkers who they wanted to invest in real estate. They wanted the benefits, but they didn't necessarily want to take the time to be active landlords and have to dive into the intricacies that go with that to be successful. And so we saw it as an opportunity both to grow our business and to help lives of people that we really cared about. And so we dived in and the rest is history from there.
yeah, I think that just to add that for me, my passion for real estate started like very young. I was 15 when I helped my mom buy her first home in Austin, and she didn't know where to start. And I was reading books and I was learning about, what to look in real estate, location. And, I basically served as a realtor because she didn't have one. And so we found the perfect home. And today that's her best investment ever. And looking back, that really inspired me to pursue finance as my degree in college, and just really learn how to use money to benefit your family, benefit others. And so I loved that. With that, I went into management consulting, and I found that was satisfying, but it's not as satisfying as I thought it would be. And when we both became passionate about real estate, I thought it was a perfect hobby that started as a hobby and then became our passion and main focus. So
I am curious because, even from like our perspective, right? A lot of people are like, oh, why didn't you do a single family long-term tenant first? Like everybody thinks that you need to do a single family like home, but you guys went into Airbnbs, and that's almost like a whole new world because you're not dealing with just one person for a year. In your situation, you would have dealt with 3 people for a year. You dealt with a lot of people all the time. So how'd you choose short-term rentals first?
I think that my mom mentioned it to us. Out of all people, like I never thought of Airbnb or short-term rentals. We never really used them. And then my mom was like, have you thought of this? Like, it would be really good. Like, a lot of people are doing it now and it's really fun. You should look into it since you guys are into the real estate, business kind of thing. And so that kind of triggered the thought. And then Jonathan, you want to share a little bit about how?
Yeah, the only thing I would add to that is we moved into the fourplex. And so, when you're doing your first investment, you're sitting there and you're looking at the numbers and doing the analysis, especially if you're an engineer, and you have to get everything penciled in. And it's important to have a plan. It's important to do your analysis. But the day you close, the real game begins.
Right.
We had analyzed on this fourplex that we were going to make $300 or $400 a month of cash flow. And so we closed on it, moved into one unit, and a week into it, a problem with the AC pops up. Mm-hmm. And then a couple of weeks later, another problem pops up. Well, instead of making $300 to $400 with our long-term tenants, the truth is that we were probably losing $200 or $300 a month. And so, just the experience that we'd had learning about short-term rental, I thought, hey, we're 3 blocks from the stadium. Like, what do we have to lose when our first tenant's lease is up by just trying to remodel it, make it nicer, and just short-term rental it? And we didn't even know if it would work. It's a C-class property. We didn't even know, do people go and stay in C-class properties for Airbnb if they're renovated? Like, we didn't know, but we did our homework and then took the risk, and it worked out really well. And after that, we just didn't turn back. So
actually, that's really, really cool because you quickly found that you were going to have a problem. But a lot of people will stay with it. Like, okay, maybe another problem won't happen and maybe another problem won't happen. Or the times in between each problem are long enough to make that person stay comfortable and not want to pivot into something that will work better. Mm-hmm. So it's really awesome that you could even reflect on that together and be like, hey, I think we should do something new. Just right away.
Yeah. I thought that it was a really great opportunity to learn too, because I'm very much of a planner and I love to have structure and a way to know how to get to that finish line. But the finish line, we changed the how, not the target, right? We still accomplish the target. It's just sometimes you have to take different paths to get there. And that's kind of what we did. And honestly, it was a very eye-opening experience because now we get to do it, beyond that fourplex. And so it was very exciting.
Well, I think one more thing that really benefited us, even moving into multifamily now. So we do have one long-term rental. Our first house that I mentioned is a long-term rental, always has been, because HOA won't let us do short-term rental.
You're like, I have to.
And obviously we've had ups and downs, but overall it's been easy. It's easy to sign a lease. You find a good tenant, you sign a lease, and you march on. You don't necessarily make a lot of money, but if you invest in a good market, it's a good investment. Yes. One good thing that came out of short-term rental, though, is that short-term rental is extremely active. It is a business. And I think that's one thing that a lot of people miss when they first start investing, is that if you're passively investing, you can legit say, okay, it's an investment. if you're on the active side, you're not only an investor, you're also a business owner. And so the lessons that we learned about being business owners in short-term rental is part of what I think has helped us in multifamily, because the same story is true there, as both of you know.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of parallels you can kind of draw between like asset managing like a large multifamily to basically asset managing a a bunch of Airbnbs. Yeah, because it is very, very active and it takes daily involvement for sure. But I want to circle back. Your single family home that you initially had, the city won't allow you, or the HOA won't allow you to do short-term rentals there. A lot of our listeners probably don't know too much about short-term rentals. It's not really talked about since we mainly focus on multifamily here, but like, would you mind sharing some of the other challenges that you have like with short-term rentals? Because I know in Arlington, there's definitely some restrictions, but what are some other challenges for sure that you come across on a daily basis?
Yeah. The biggest thing is it requires, compared to a long-term rental, it requires a team, which means that you have challenges working with people both on your team and challenges with the people that are coming in and out. So when I have a long-term rental, I can very thoroughly vet someone coming in to lease it. With a short-term rental, your vetting is typically a few messages back and forth. And there's definitely some red flags to look for, but it's not 100% thing. And you do get people who come and, maybe they want to complain about everything, or maybe they cause a problem. And so learning how to work through those situations and then eventually teaching your team members how to work through those situations is something that you definitely have to master. When it comes to choosing your short-term rental, whether that's the city or the specific property, there's definitely some key challenges you want to consider. You mentioned city restrictions. And so one thing that I tell people, I have people all the time that are like, oh, I want to rent my condo or I want to rent my townhome. And I just tell them no, like do not buy something that is in an HOA, because it either is banned for short-term rental or it will be banned for short-term rental. It's one of those two. And people don't always know that. And I've seen so many stories on the forums where people, they buy something and they realize it afterwards. And to me, that's, pretty sad, because that's a pretty big misstep that you have to overcome. Within the context of the city, you obviously have to understand the regulations and stuff. Arlington allows short-term rentals. You have to get specific permits, which require an inspection. You have to pay taxes, and there's very stringent laws you have to follow. And so it just becomes that game of, you can go to another city that has minimal or no restrictions, but suddenly you have more competition. Whereas in Arlington, not as everyone is wanting to follow those things. And so, perhaps it's a little bit easier once you've passed those city regulations. But I don't know, those are a couple of things I think of.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to let the listeners know, full disclosure, and just to kind of share with the listeners as well, we just recently leveraged Jonathan and Paula's knowledge in Airbnbs, and we were able to joint venture close on an 8-unit Airbnb portfolio now, which is really cool. In Arlington, in a specific area that Airbnbs are allowed by the city, which then they undergo hotel occupancy tax and everything like that as well. But because Jonathan and Paula are experts at Airbnbs in Arlington, we knew we had the best operators there. But yeah, there's plenty of potentially JV opportunities that we offer and Jonathan offers as well. So yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, we're really excited about that project. It's taken off and done well. And like you said, if, being a JV deal, it would not have happened if we did it as a team, have both the short-term rental experience and the multifamily experience, and that's been really cool to see both of those worlds kind of merge into a project that I think is going to turn out really well.
What was the reason you wanted to go towards multifamily? Because I know you two are really successful in short-term rentals. So what was the need or the why or the desire?
I think that those are two complementary businesses. So we have technically what I like to think of two offerings. So one offering is a short-term rental business, and we do, and it's great for cash flow, and it's been amazing. And as we mentioned, there's a lot of opportunities to learn in a smaller scale before jumping into multifamily. And so that's one of our offerings. Our other offering is multifamily. And with that, usually we get to impact more people because we usually need more investors to partner with us to do that bigger purchase. And then also we get to think long term. So for us as active investors, I feel like it takes a few more years to see the big fruit of our work when it comes to multifamily. And so I think that those are two complementary businesses that really help us achieve our goals today and in the future.
And I love that because I see it that way too. And I know that was mentioned before, but I mean, one is much more short term than the long term family, which is totally okay. But it's still, I mean, you both even got like a glimpse on how to interact with like a lot of people like in a short period of time, which can easily happen when you have apartment complexes that are well over 100 apartments, you know, like there could be one day where 100, something happens with each 100 of those apartments, you know, and it's like, okay, well, how are we going to water down all these fires today? Putting that together. What are you wanting to do long-term with real estate investing? Like, what is the why or the goal? It doesn't, and if, I mean, you can say whatever timeline you want. I'm just more curious about like what you see yourselves doing with it or how long you see yourself being in it.
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think kind of our vision in general is we're obviously still adding short-term rental properties like the one we just mentioned. So we aren't done with that, but in general, our focus is on multifamily now. And there's a lot of reasons in that. Some of them Paula just mentioned. One that's a big thing for me is helping other people. I mentioned when I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, you know, I was concerned about like our financial future. And so I began to see a lot of friends and family members who, you know, they had saved money their whole life. They had budgeted, they had worked hard, but they were not set or they were not going to be set at a retirement point to retire. And so being able to help those people has been a big piece of my why. Yes. And it's been really cool because we've had a lot of those people jump in as investors on our first few deals. But yeah, so I see the short-term rental as a stepping stone in our real estate world. I think 5 years or so down the road, we'll probably be entirely multifamily. And, you know, 10 years down the road, we'll probably be entirely multifamily, but much, much more passive, you know? And so that's kind of what I see in our future.
Yeah, because I don't want to say I know Jonathan, but I know Jonathan. So like for you, like you are or / were like an engineer, like for like a big company. And like even from that aspect, right? Like you're making good money and you weren't 100% sure if that 401k, like how long it would last you after retirement. So like to imagine everybody else who even is not making as much money as you were at the time, like, because that is a wide variety of people. Like, and it blows my mind though, that like not enough of us are talking about that or our employers aren't really talking about that. How has that conversation even been like with your investors or with others? I don't know if you've brought it up first or like just in general, because it's really hard for people to talk about money, but I feel like, I think it's sad when you see, you know, like older women or men, even like just still working at Target or working at Subway. And you know that they're at the age where they should just be like hanging out, looking at turtles.
And that's the hardest thing because first of all, in this business, you can't help everyone, both because you're one person and because some people, they just don't want to be helped, if I'm honest. But yeah, that's really difficult for me to see. I think it's kind of two conversations. A lot of the folks in my world, in the engineering world that are older, they may have a pension program or something to kind of supplement their income. And so from like a food and shelter perspective, they're probably going to be okay. It's more about their legacy and being able to go do their bucket list, their adventures that they want to do, right? That's what I see in my world, kind of in the older crowd. I think the younger crowd though, that doesn't have pensions and stuff really needs to think, the millennials really need to think hard about their investing and stuff because they don't have some of those opportunities like pensions and things that, you know, our parents or grandparents had. And that's something that really is not talked about a lot. Like their financial future is totally on their shoulders. And so that's something I try to highlight to that crowd.
Yeah. And I think that we were talking about this, you know, we don't have pension, but we have the opportunity to redefine retirement, right? Like we can retire any day we want if we do the right things. And so I think that it's almost like a really great opportunity to really take advantage of that. And how can we grow our money faster so that we can cover those expenses? How can we put a ceiling to our expenses instead of Black Friday is coming up? Everyone loves shopping. Retail is huge, right? But do we really need all of that? Or can we like budget down and live comfortably longer without having to work 100 hours a week? Yeah. And so I think that it goes both ways. Is not only we don't have pensions, but I think that that pushes us to really create an opportunity to retire, redefine retirement. And then the second thing is that we can start redefining what our lifestyle is. And can we, a lot of our friends are like, oh gosh, you do real estate. Like, I bet you make a lot of money. And yes, we do. We work hard, but like our next step, you were asking about our vision is, how do we build boundaries so that, we can have time for our family, time for our friends, time for, I was reading this book called Dream Big by Bob Goff, and it's a great book. And it really just challenges you to think of like, how are you living life for others? And I feel like that's where my heart is for, right? Like, it's not just $1 extra in your bank account, is how are you impacting other people? And I think that also opens up when you define your retirement timing. You can do that. You can have a greater impact on others. So
absolutely. I was just add to that too. It's just like, it really does scare me though. Like a lot of millennials and people like our age, we're all about like instant gratification. Like, and especially even the younger generation, I don't know, whatever the generation after millennial is, Generation Z or whatever.
Z.
Yeah. So like, they're all about instant gratification, right? And like, they're slowly coming onto the workforce now, right? Like, and you see, as Jonathan was mentioning earlier as well, as like, you don't have these pension programs because you're not in a company long enough to get a pension now. Like, a lot of millennials and the next generation, Generation Z, like we're all about instant gratification, number one. Number two, we're all about like, if we don't like a job, we move to the next one, right? So like, even if you're a chance to put into a 401k, like you match a little bit, who knows? Like a lot of times you aren't educated well enough on those 401k plans. You're like, I don't know, maybe I have a 401k somewhere, which is obviously not enough to actually live off of if you want to retire at 65 or whatever. But, it's going to be a real challenge, like trying to educate our generation and the next generation, like, hey, there's other alternatives out there, and to say, okay, you invest in the syndication or invest in real estate or multifamily real estate. And I promise it's the fastest way to build generational wealth, even though it's going to take forever. But like, it's like,
yeah,
they don't understand that concept, and I don't know. I think it's going to be a real challenge. And I'm really scared to see, like when we are of retirement age, like what state America is in at that time.
Yeah.
Yeah. And one part that really excites me on that, although it is scary, is that we are able to give access to people. To be honest, and not everyone thinks of like passively investing. Not everyone has the capability to invest passively in real estate. Not everyone has 50K sitting on the bank account. But if they learn that they too can do that and that they too can double their money if they, put it in one of our opportunities, as they educate themselves and they learn that they too have access, this is no longer, a niche, closed club just for the rich or just for the people who were born into wealthy families. You get to really pave your own way to success and to financial freedom if you choose to learn that you also have a, kind of like a seat in the table in a way.
Yes. And I love how you say that too, because it's not like the four of us were just like born into real estate. You know what I mean? Like we all have really intensive jobs, or Jonathan and I did until we went to the land of real estate. But like before that, you are working a lot. You're working your regular, whatever it could be, 8 to 5, 9 to 6, sometimes earlier, sometimes later. But then we were doing real estate in the mornings, at night, and on the weekends, We put in the extra work to get to that extra place. And, a lot of people will say like, oh, I don't want to get a second job. And it's like, well, neither did we, but we did it.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a great point, Susie. And one thing I would just highlight, because I know we have a good audience on this podcast, both active and passive investors, is that's really one of the first decisions you have to make as an investor. I personally believe real estate investing is for everyone. I don't think necessarily active investing is for everyone. And no one, when we went to our first meetup, no one pulled us aside and said, hey, these are the 5 challenges you're going to face as an active investor, as a landlord, as a business owner. It was just, oh, that's the only path there is. We didn't know about passive investing. fortunately for us, we like being active. We enjoy the challenges. It's been a good fit for us. But for many people, that learning, yes, they need to put in that time to learn. And it may take a little bit longer as a passive investor to grow your wealth, but it's very doable. The opportunity's there. I think someone said something like real estate, it's not a get rich quick scheme, but it is a get rich for sure scheme. And so I think that's an important thing that people understand.
And I think it also helps to have like the start and the finish in mind that, burnout is a reality. You need to build boundaries for your time and manage your time and be able to make time for those who matter, because life is not eternal. Like for us, it's like 3 years, 4 years. Like I've told Jonathan, like, hey, I can no longer work like 85, 100 hours a week. I can no longer do that. Like, Bryce, so how are we building those boundaries, and how are we building our team and our systems so that we can be able to create those time boundaries in our life and be able to enjoy what we're working for. So I think that for those who are thinking of, if like the start, and just have an end in mind too, so that you can work towards it.
Yeah. And the end doesn't like come right away, right? I mean, you
No.
have to think about it, and you have to think about it again, and you have to think about it again, because like every day, something different can occur to you to where you're like, oh, nope, I need to do this now. And it's okay if it even changes a little bit.
Yeah.
That's the great ebbs and flows of like how it all comes. But like you will start to feel that fire and feel that passion, which makes you want to like be passive and active, like whatever that is. I mean, because passive is a perfect way for you to get to the same exact spot that we will be in, like it's just how you want to get there. Because we all want to be passive. Trust me.
Yeah.
That's the goal. It really is.
It really is. Yeah.
Absolutely. I'd love to continue to chat with you both for the rest of the night, but unfortunately we're coming to the end of the show. But before we end, we have 4 exploratory questions we ask all of our guests. These are 4 adventurous questions here. So the first one we have, and you can answer, Jonathan, if you want to answer, and then Paula, you can, or Paula and then Jonathan, however you want to do it. I'll leave it up to you. But the first question is, where is one place you wish to travel to and why?
I said Australia because it was in our bucket list for this past year, but they're shut down because of COVID. So hopefully next year they're open, and that's in my bucket list.
I'm going with her, so I guess it's Australia for me too. No, we love to travel, so yeah, I'm looking forward to that trip next year.
Yeah,
trip on the Barbie.
Yep.
Cool. So the second question is, what is the number one thing on your bucket list, and how are you leveraging real estate investing to achieve it? So besides Australia.
Man, that was a hard one because I'm definitely like a dreamer. I have a lot of things on my bucket list. One thing though that's really cool for me. So Paula is originally from Colombia, and so she has a lot of her family that still live there. We go down and visit. And so a few years ago, I started learning Spanish, and I'm kind of a upper intermediate level, but one of my bucket list items is to be fluent one day. And
Nice.
One thing I think I will need to get to that last step, if you will, is, spending a lot of time in the country, kind of immersed. And so I think when we have kids, like being able to go there and spend time in Colombia with family and, being able to learn Spanish, like that's something I'm looking forward to in the future that I think real estate will provide for us.
No, I really love that answer. And when you have those little babies who are running around speaking Spanish, please send me all those videos, because how cute.
Yeah.
For real.
All those little babies.
Well, I mean, that's 2. It can be 2. No, but more than one is all the little babies.
I feel like a lot.
Yeah, I would love that. I'm with his dream. I also hope that, as I mentioned, I think being able to impact more people. And I'm still kind of like, praying and defining like, what does that look like? But I would love to, impact the folks in my country, and also just continue to be active here locally in the DFW. And so I would love to dedicate more time towards that.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
So the third question we have for you is, what is one piece of advice you have for somebody that's looking to passively invest into real estate?
So there's a lot of things I could say, but mine's simple, and it's just do something, jump in and just make it happen. And that's not a statement saying don't learn or anything like that, but it's just saying the people that win are the people that do. So, figure it out and make it happen,
That's right.
Wow, just do it.
Just do it.
I guess 100% of the shots you don't take. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes to that. And also I think learning, it's a good, again, just set a timeline and learn, and do your due diligence, get to meet amazing people like Michael and Susie and get to see what they have done and, learn. But then set a timeline that you said, okay, I have learning now. I'm going to give myself 3 months, 6 months to really learn what this is, what is the opportunity looks like. Start looking at deals that you are interested in, areas that you're interested in. But then, as Jonathan said, just do it. Like there comes a point where you just have to pull the trigger. And so, yeah.
Oh, that's great advice. Thank you for that. So then the fourth and final question is, if you had unlimited resources available to you, how would you leave an impact?
I'll let you go first on that one.
It relates to my second answer. I think I really would love to. I think there's many, many kids and people that need help in the US for sure. And I love supporting all the philanthropic things that I join. But my heart is really tender towards the kids in my country. Poverty looks very different over there. And so I would love to be able to build schools and like teach them about Jesus and, just be able to minister to them in a greater way if possible. So.
Love it.
Yeah. I mean, I'm definitely completely on board with that. A couple of years ago, we got to go on a kind of extended weekend mission trip, if you will, to Tijuana, Mexico and build a house for a family. This is probably 4 years ago, the first time that we did it. And I kind of went into it like, yeah, it'll be cool or whatever. It's like one of the biggest things that's had an impact on my life. Like I came back a different person just in terms of like gratitude and in terms of like just aspirations to really help people, because I saw like, wow, even though there's nothing super special about me, even though I'm not like super wealthy or whatever, like I can really make a change and help people. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, being able to do that in Colombia or, even in my own community here, that's something that's important to me.
No, I love that. I do. Yeah, no, that's like near and dear to our hearts. So that's awesome. Thank you too for sharing that so much.
Yeah. But before we end the show, Jonathan and Paula, would you mind sharing with our Adventures family how they can learn more about you, your short-term rentals, and your multifamily syndications as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a great website that Paula actually built for us. It's Apogee MFC, like multifamilycapital.com. On there, we have a very short ebook. It's almost like an article about passive investing. And so if you're listening to this podcast and you're thinking, wow, I resonate with this idea that, hey, I need to have a plan for my financial future, and passive investing sounds like something that could be of interest to me, I would encourage you just go download it, read through it, and reach out to us. I'm very active on LinkedIn, and I think that link is in the show notes. So feel free to reach out to me or Paula, both of us, and we'd love to chat.
Absolutely.
I was going to say they will definitely be in the show notes, and please do go read that ebook. I mean, even as Jonathan mentioned, and Paula actually. So learning is the first step, and then taking action, even just by downloading the ebook, that'll put you further than where you were before you listened to this podcast. So make sure to do it. Make sure to reach out because they are a joy to chat with.
Yeah. And if you connect with Paula and Jonathan on LinkedIn, make sure you tell them, I heard you on the Adventures of Real Estate Investor podcast, and they will be sure to accept your connection. I guarantee it.
Absolutely.
Cool. Well, thanks again so much for joining us, Paula and Jonathan. It truly was a pleasure to be able to spend this fabulous Sunday night with you.
Thanks so much, guys. Appreciate you.
Yep. Awesome. Well, until next time, explore more, adventure awaits.
Woo!